Hello everyone, welcome to the newsroom. A little bit different this week. I'm going to break the show into two parts. This is going to be free on YouTube. Thank you for joining me. I am joined by The Athletic's Simon Hughes. The Athletic is the new home of football writing. We know this, and it's the home of football writing because we've got Simon Hughes in the building. I promise you we'll be changing up the content, and this is one of those things. So before we talk to Simon, obviously you can sign up to The Athletic right now. You can get 50% off your yearly subscription, so it'll be about £2.50 a month by going to www.theathletic.co.uk/Redmen TV. The Athletic, the new home of football writing. And one of those writers, as already mentioned, is Simon Hughes. Simon, thank you very much for joining me, mate.
Thanks for inviting me.
I am really looking forward to this one. We're going to do this slightly differently to what we normally do for the subscription show. We're going to break this one into two parts, as I've mentioned. We're going to talk a little bit about you, your career, obviously about football. We want to talk about Paul Glatzel's contract. We want to talk about the MK Dons ticketing, how Liverpool are going to approach 7 games in 22 days, amongst other things. We might get on to how good this Liverpool side is in part 2, the trademarking of Liverpool as well. But before we get into it, why are you now writing for The Athletic?
It's quite a long answer, I guess. I mean, for the last 10 years or 15 years since I started in journalism, there's been no investment really in writing and news gathering. It's just been a period of endless cuts, much like a lot of other industries, I guess. And it's the first time that anyone has come in and has started investing again in what I enjoy doing most. So the first and foremost, it's the opportunity to go and write about the stuff that I want to write about, the stuff that I enjoy doing the most. I know obviously that there's been quite a lot of comments about sort of the wages that are being thrown around, and the sort of the pay that some of the journalists have increased. Obviously, that's a good thing. I felt like, I'm sure I'll speak on behalf of a few journalists, it's not sort of the lucrative industry that people might think it is. It's low pay for an unbelievable amount, a lot of hard work. Now, there's a lot of perks to the job, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love the job, but to be honest, I haven't had a pay increase for since 2008. Wow. Other than when I've gone out and done my own stuff or changed the career for myself, by going freelance as I did a couple of years ago. I had to do that and actually take a pay cut initially to grow and be able to pay the mortgage. So that obviously comes into it, but primarily, that it's the willingness to go and invest in journalism, and not only that, sort of look at it, take a step back a little bit and try and do it a little bit differently to the way it is at the moment, because obviously there's the cycle of journalism is pretty well known in terms of it's so match led at the moment, which I understand. Football boils down to the matches, and I do enjoy being at the matches, but there's this routine of doing press conferences, match reports, post-match press conferences, follow-ups, which is great and it does have its place, but they're trying to do it a bit differently and take it back and refocus on more investigative journalism, if you like, which is the sort of stuff that I like to do. So although I still want to be at the matches and still do them, it's still important that you're there, because you obviously need to, visibility is important, and you need to maintain the contacts that you have. There's a greater freedom with the role that I have, particularly at the moment. So I'm covering Liverpool with James Pearce, but they've said to me that they want me to go out and sort of have a bit more freedom and to go and do other stuff, around Merseyside, sort of ground level stuff. With so many stories out there, just not enough time sometimes to cover them all. And hopefully, there's a few people like me who will have a better chance to give a better representation to all of football, I guess. So it's not just Premier League football, it's grassroots football, it's Football League.
You've just released an article on Accrington Stanley actually this week, haven't you? Yeah.
I went last weekend with Accrington to Bristol Rovers and spent the whole weekend with them. So it was, a behind the scenes all access feature.
All access.
So it was, going down on the team bus, having dinner with them on the Friday night, taking part in the quiz that they have on the Friday night, winning the quiz.
Did you?
Yeah, for the staff, which obviously went down terribly. But you know, all the lads were brilliant. You know, they're really open and funny, humorous, intelligent. You know, really, really good lads.
Just not good at quizzes.
But just not good at quizzes. So, yeah, there was that. And then, you know, behind the scenes, inside the dressing room, before the game, at half-time, after the game. I was almost in the dugout with the manager, but the space, it was like sort of divided into two small dugouts, so there wasn't the space. So that would have been pretty cool if I could have done that. But, you know, I think I got a full picture and obviously went on the bus with them on the way home, and you know they're having a sing along and all that. So it was brilliant, really, real eye opener, and felt like I learnt a lot about what it takes to run sort of a League One football club. It's not just built on passion, as people maybe see Accrington a little bit, or certainly the management team that they've got there who've been together for a long time. You know, the really perceptive guys who tactically very astute. You know, there's a lot of work went in, tactical work, you know, video analysis before the game, which you know, really blew me away, really. And they had a lot of joy in the game with that. They drew 3-3 in the end, but they had a man sent off, which sort of distorted the chances of winning, but they showed a lot of courage to get back into the game. So yeah, it's that sort of thing that I can do, but obviously still be doing a lot of Liverpool related stuff as well. So you know, sort of maybe the bigger picture style stories, which maybe in the past I haven't had the chance to, just because of the demands of the job. Now, as I said, it's not maybe it's being framed as being like sort of a takeover of British journalism. It's not as dramatic as that. It's just an alternative to what's sort of out there at the moment. You know, there's a lot of brilliant journalists who are on Liverpool 24/7. They know every single little thing that's going on at the club, and you know that has its place as well. I'd like to think, you know, that between me and James, we've got as much covered. You know, James has been covering Liverpool for such a long time. You know, he knows absolutely everything that's going on, but we're just sort of presenting it in a slightly different way, taking a step back and trying to provide, you know, the wider context, because obviously we're on the internet and we've got unlimited space.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll come back to some of this stuff later. I think I wanted to talk a little bit about the international break and what it means for you. And do you take this as some time off? I mean, clearly you spent the weekend with Accrington Stanley, so maybe not. I mean, do you take a breather during these type of breaks?
Well, not this one, because obviously it's the first month of the Athletics, so you know we need content. You know, we need to fill that gap with something else. So it's been a busy couple of weeks for me, and I know in the past maybe I've tried to do that. I mean, it's been nice. I mean, in normal circumstances, I probably would have taken the weekend off at least, but obviously I was down in Bristol, so I didn't do that. It gives a chance to sort of plan a little bit, you know, ahead of what's going to be a busy period for particularly for Liverpool, with so many games coming up. So, you know, there's been, you know, developing stories and starting stories and speaking to people. So no, it's actually probably been busier than normal in many ways. I like the international break normally just because, you know, the football season is so intense, and you know, the Liverpool matches now, you know, desperation to see them win the league and everything else. It's nice to have that little break to ease your mind and maybe focus on something else, which is not so emotionally challenging, I suppose.
Are you kidding me? I've had the Vuelta of Spaniard here to watch for the last 2.5 weeks. I'm engrossed. I'm emotionally involved in this. But I tell you what, it's not the international football that does my head in, Sam. It's the lack of Premier League football. You know, I use it to vent a little bit of steam, you know, and I think that's probably what you're trying to say as well. You know, that there is so much pressure on each and every Liverpool game now. We've got 7 games in 22 days coming up, and the focus now is going to be, it's a game every 3 days until the next international break, and it's going to be difficult for Jurgen Klopp, isn't it? Now, coming out of the international break and focusing on Liverpool for a few minutes, how do you think he is going to actually attack those games?
Well, if you look at what he did last season, you know, to say he's used to the one area of the season which he hasn't got right consistently over the last few years has been the winter or January.
January, yeah. There was a bad February one
January,
time.
Yeah. He's still, it's where the season, if they've fallen short, that's where they've fallen short. It was definitely the case. I think you can point towards that period last season where they obviously lost to City, drew with Leicester and then drew with West Ham. But you know, this stage of the season, he seems to be pretty good at now. Last season, you know, I know they lost a couple of games against Napoli and in the League Cup, didn't they? And then drew with Chelsea. But he seems to keep a regularly settled team in this period. It tends to be December where he starts chopping and changing it a bit, ahead of the Christmas period. So if his past sort of selection process is anything to go by, I'd imagine it's going to be pretty similar. Of course, last season it seems a bit different to this season in the sense that the forward line are a lot more functioning at this moment in time. Last season they struggled to click, I think, after the World Cup, and all seemed a bit tired. But
we were playing a different formation then as well.
Yeah.
We were playing a lot of the 4-2-3-1 or the 4-2-2-2, whatever you want to say. We were playing it. Now we just seem to have continued with what we were doing at the back end of last season. It does seem to be working for us.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, people have said to me about, surely the forwards are going to need a proper rest at some point in the season. But, I mean, people forget, like Salah has had, he's given him as much rest as he possibly can. Ahead of last season, he had I think 10 days break when other players didn't have a break. He's had a couple of weeks break ahead of the African Nations Cup. He's had a couple of weeks after the African Nations Cup. He has actually had a lot of rest, but it's only been broken up into different chunks. Meanwhile, Firmino, you could argue he certainly hasn't had as much rest, but he certainly started the season in brilliant form. I think, against Burnley, he was absolutely world-class performance. And Mane is indestructible, isn't he? I say that, he doesn't get injured, but he's just carries on, doesn't he? So,
and the two of them, Mane and Salah, haven't been away on international break this time around, have they? Because of the African Nations Cup, or whichever one it is that they only play the players from their own league in.
Yeah.
So obviously
they've had another break.
But Firmino's an interesting one going into this game, isn't he? Because he obviously played Wednesday morning UK time over in America, and Fabinho, which means he probably doesn't get back until Thursday's day of recording.
Yeah.
Is he going to have a half-day training or a recovery session before a Saturday early kick-off?
Possibly. He might. I mean, the thing that he doesn't have as well compared to last season is Divock Origi, the option to use him. He's been prepared to play Mane up through the middle and Origi on the left, so there's a possibility that he might do that, particularly when you've got to go to Naples on Tuesday. I don't think that unsettles the team drastically. So, yeah, I mean, I think that the midfield is the area where he's continued to sort of tinker with. I think that'll be that he'll be looking at that. I think obviously the fullbacks. I think it still seems like Trent's still a young player. People forget, don't they? So he can't play every single game. I think he needs rest at vital times. But by and large, he's the sort of manager who does believe in sort of consistency. So if the team gets on a bit of a run, he's not going to be making vast changes. I think despite the intensity of the games, it'll be substitutions at the right time, one or two players here and there coming out. It's obviously with the League Cup coming up, that'll be an opportunity for some of the younger players to play perhaps, but and
maybe Van Dijk to have a game off.
Yeah, well, Liverpool have got a big squad as well now. But you look at the strength of the bench; it's as strong a bench as I can remember since Gerard Houllier was manager. I think that's fair to say. I mean, people obviously sort of discount Houlier's sort of periods a little bit now, but he did have a strong squad at that time and had players that could come on and affect the game, and Liverpool have got that now, I think.
No, I think you're right, and I'm really interested because obviously, for me, I think Fabinho and Firmino might not start this weekend because of the travelling that they've done more than anything else. I think, Divock maybe comes in, maybe you see Wijnaldum in the 6. James Milner obviously doesn't go away with international duty anymore. He didn't have he hasn't had a tough couple of weeks there. So I think James might start somewhere along the lines. And then it's first team Napoli, Tuesday to Sunday, I believe it is, to the Chelsea game. It's probably full first team, midweek game. Is that the MK Dons one then?
MK Dons comes after that, I think, yeah.
And then you've probably got Sheffield United, I think, Salzburg, and then it might be Leicester, something like that. So yeah, I imagine the Napoli and the Chelsea games are going to be full strength sides, and there's at some point something's got to give in one of those 3 games. I just feel it's probably the first one of the 3. It's Newcastle at home as well. No disrespect to them, but we should be able to beat them.
Well, that's it. Out of all those games, Chelsea is the most important. I would say, or the biggest game, because obviously they dropped points there last. Well, you say they dropped points. A point at Chelsea is not a bad point, is it? And they obviously got a late equaliser, but it's around the same period of the season. if Liverpool do beat Newcastle, which I'd expect them to, and then go to Chelsea and win there, that's a great start to the season. I haven't dropped any. That'll be a big statement to make. I think.
Especially how tough a game we had with them in the Super Cup as well.
Already, it seems to me that Liverpool and City are the two, who are going to be competing for the title. If Liverpool can get, 6 wins out of 6, with some tricky games in that 6, I think it's obviously a great start. And so I think a lot of the preparation will be geared towards that. I mean, Liverpool in the Champions League have been quite... People forget, don't they, that their away record, particularly in group stages, has been pretty crap.
I remember thinking at one point during last season, we lost away to Roma in the semi-final. We went through to the final, but we lost away. Everybody's away in the Champions League final, but we were away. We lost. We then lost to PSG. We lost to Napoli. We lost to Red Star Belgrade, didn't we? Yeah. All away from home. And there's 5 European games away on the bounce that we've lost.
Yeah, and even the season before, they obviously drew with Spartak Moscow, drew with Seville. I mean, it's a different team now, isn't it? But it's clearly something that I think Klopp might need to, the European, champions, aren't they? Maybe he doesn't need to address it, but it'll be something that I'd imagine he'd be thinking about. They're not getting the best results away from home, so it does place a lot more pressure on the home games. Obviously, this group that they're in, I mean, come on, it's the best. The draw that they would have wanted. Maybe Napoli aside, who were a good team, but you'd expect Liverpool to get through from that group. It's in theory the easiest group that they've had in the last 3 seasons. So that helps, obviously, going into the second half of the season. You'd expect Klopp to be able to rotate the team a little bit in these games and pick up the wins that they need. So yeah, I mean, it opens up quite quickly, doesn't it, Dan? Obviously, if you get that Chelsea win, then Sheffield United's, it's going to be a tough game, Bramall Lane, because I studied in Sheffield, so I used to go to Bramall Lane every now and again. And
Paul was the same, and he's got
it's not a soft spot.
It's not.
It's not. No, I couldn't relate. Well, I couldn't relate to either club.
See, I studied in Leeds, and I definitely don't have a soft spot, because I remember when they signed Fowler. I remember coming out of the train station and their club shop wasn't far away, and it just had Fowler 11 on the back. Now, it wasn't the number that he wore at Leeds United, but it was how much they signed him for. And it came out after Christmas. I can't remember if it was after Christmas or it was in the summer or something. And I come out the train station all bright-eyed and ready to go to university, and I just saw me hero in a Leeds United, his name on the back of a Leeds United shirt. I was like, I hate Hughes. I absolutely hate everything about it. I did go to see a couple of games.
When I went, I did go with the idea of thinking, I might go down, quite regularly. And I'd only go every now and again, but that said, the atmosphere at Bramall Lane's it's a difficult place, and they'll be desperate to get one over Liverpool. So it's not an easy game, but you'd expect, again, Liverpool have managed those sort of environments like at Burnley. That performance at Burnley, I thought was absolutely brilliant. It was as comfortable as you're going to get against a difficult opponent. Liverpool just looked a couple of levels above, and they're obviously going to, Newcastle at home's a game that you would probably want after the international break. I know they picked up a little bit with a few decent results themselves, but
they got 4 points in the last 2 games, I think, didn't they? Obviously, Girona and Watford beating Arsenal.
Yeah, beat Tottenham away, which is a great result. But Tottenham a bit ropey at the moment, aren't they? You can't take that result away from them. But Liverpool's record at home to Newcastle has been brilliant over the last 30 years, all my lifetime. So I'd be surprised if that ended on Saturday.
So what about, let's talk about something slightly different. Obviously, Paul Glatzel's just signed a new contract. He's out at the moment. He did an interview with liverpoolfc.com. Actually, it's really good interview, and it goes into some wide-ranging topics. But one of the things that they do mention, and they talk to him about, is how long it's going to take for this recovery and stuff. Now, he said it's going to be about 8 months, but he's actually doing his recovery at Melwood, which I think is quite interesting, rather than Kirby.
Yeah, well, I know Jurgen Klopp really likes him. I mean,
seems to really like everyone, doesn't he?
Yeah, I know. I was just going to say that the club, every player is a highly rated player, and the manager always likes sort of the player. Of course, he does. But I mean, I don't know how much you want to talk about Bobby Duncan, but I know that for example, Klopp liked the fact that Paul Glatzel is a very selfless player. He's very much a team player, and I think he would have had a chance of getting on. Let's have it right. This is an incredible Liverpool team. It's it's a squad that's as strong as it's ever been. It's very difficult for young players to get in. But, you know, the word that I heard, you know, coming out, that the Klopp was very impressed. I know all the academy staff absolutely love Paul Glatzel. He captained the under-18s last season. So that shows you, you know, a lot about his personality. He's obviously had a terrible injury, which is going to be difficult for somebody at that age to come back. And then, you know, it often takes 2 seasons, doesn't it? If it's 8 months, we've seen with Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, you know, it's taken him to, you know, a much longer time to sort of to get back in the swing of things. So he was training at Melwood anyway beforehand, and trained quite a lot there last season. So I just think, you know, it obviously says a lot that the Klopp wants him in and around the first team environment, because, you know, we've heard all the stories. Even Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain has said, you know, you can feel quite, you know, it's easy to get very down when you're training alone, particularly if you're training at the academy, that the first team's going to feel like a long, long way away. And I think that at that time you need to feel like you've still got a chance. You've got to see that, you've got to be able to visualise what you're getting back towards. So I think it's a good move by the club. I've got to be honest, I haven't seen a great deal of him. I haven't seen as much of the under-18s and the academy football as I used to. Just I suppose the sort of the demands of the job and everything else. But everybody you speak to, including Alex Inglethorpe, absolutely love Paul Glatzel, and they think that, you know, if he does all the right things, and he needs a bit of a look. At the end of the day, he's trying to break into a team which has 3 of the best strikers in the world. You know, it's not an easy position. It's not an easy team to break into. And part of me wonders as well whether Bobby Duncan realised that, you know, having gone on tour, where I think I saw some of the training sessions, and I don't want to say he struggled, but you could see the gap, you know, the gap in quality. There's going to be a gap, but, you know, sometimes when you get to that and you think, bloody hell, you know, it's you can't blame him for maybe thinking, well, I'm not going to get my chance here, you know. But obviously, you know, there's a wider story to that which we could go on about, but it's harder than ever now. You know, it just shows you what a great job Klopp's done, because, you know, a few years ago, some of these players, I always think about, like, Harry Wilson, and how, you know, Man United have obviously signed Daniel James, and he's obviously made a great start to his United career, don't get me wrong, but, you know, Harry Wilson was ahead of him really last season in the Championship, you know, creating more headlines, scoring more goals, more assists, playing for a better team, getting international recognition, and he can't get anywhere near the Liverpool team. So, and he's been sent out on loan. So it just shows you where the standards are.
I must admit, for me, the older I've got and the more football I think I've watched, I think a lot of it comes down to timing. I really do, and I think sometimes between the players, and maybe James and Wilson are a really great example of this, I just feel like who you're working with at the moment, and the squad that you're going into, and the timing that you go into that squad can really have a major impact on your career.
There's luck. I mean, I think a lot of people involved in football like to make out it's an exact science, you know, that all the, you know, if you're a top player, that you're going to make it, and if you do all the right things, you're going to make it. It doesn't always work out like that. You might get a bad injury at some point which disrupts your development. You might be trying to get into a team that's just a bit too good for the level that you're at, and not ready to wait for you to go in and develop yourself. So yeah, it's not the exact science that you know, people like to make it out to be. I think it's unfair to think of it like that.
I always think, like, you know, you see players who are linked to Liverpool, and Twitter wants them to be signed, and then they don't go and do anything in the career, and then Twitter remembers 18 months ago and has a laugh about the fact that half of Twitter wanted this player to be signed for Liverpool. And I still think to myself sometimes, I think they'd still be good at Liverpool. He could have been a good player. He could have been good for Liverpool, and then you get players like Aquilani who it didn't work out at Liverpool, and again, that's the manager, that's the time, and that's the squad, how they interact with each other. There's just so many moving parts that I find it really difficult. One of the things that I find interesting about the Glatzel stuff, while we are loosely talking about it, is the timing of the contract again. This is now, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain got one when he was out with an injury, and also there was a big media focus about him. You know, Instagram stories and Snapchat, I'm sure, and maybe TikTok if that was around. Is it win-win for Liverpool offering contracts to people when they know that the recovery's going really well? Are they getting them for cheaper than if they wait 6 months? And are they giving them a boost
Yeah.
by going, we support you in this time of need almost. I feel like it's a really sinister but also very clever but very win-win for the club and the player.
You're right. When people sort of describe it as like, it's a good, good deed that by Liverpool. And I'm like, I'm not quite looking at it in that way. They get the player on side straight away because players do remember stuff like this. I know people like to think that all footballers are mercenaries. They're not. They do remember when the club's done good by them. I think particularly, that they're getting so much crap thrown at them all the time. If a manager or a club or whatever takes care of them, I think they do tend to think more about that than people realise. And as you say, the club probably appreciates that the players. It sounds horrible to say. They can prey on them. They can prey on them a little bit more and play around the fact that I think he's clearly being given a decent contract. And the same for Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. I don't think he's on the breadline or anything like that. But the clubs are smart, and it's as you say, I totally agree with you on that. I think there's many examples of when the club have been quite quick to reward a player who's injured, because they've obviously got confidence he's going to get back. There is a risk attached because he might not come back at the same level, but they know better than anybody else with the medical team that they've got.
It's not the day after the injury's been done that these contracts are getting out. It's a couple of months later when they've seen a little bit of the recovery and they're maybe a little bit more confident about it. I think it's smart business, by the way. I'm not having a knock at the club on this side because I do think it's good for the player as well. Yeah. But I also think that sometimes I see those articles, Liverpool doing well by them, and thinking there's more to it than that.
I'm glad you spotted that as well.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff, isn't it? Let's talk a little bit about social media, the internet and society and how it's shaping sports journalism before we move into the second part of the show. We were talking off camera the last time you came in, and it was a really interesting conversation. And I remember thinking to myself, the way that sports journalism in this country used to be was you used to write for a regional, if you were lucky enough, and then you used to write for a national, and then you'd sit there for 30 years until your retirement age, probably. And I feel like now that's really changed with the internet and everything. Is that something that you would have agreed with, first of all?
Yeah, that's the route that I had. I started off at the Crosby Heralds and the sort of the local Merseyside papers, and had great experience covering non-league football and just general news as well. That was really important to just do general news because you understand better how to structure a story by doing that and just getting your hands dirty, doing stuff that you wouldn't necessarily want to do. I think that's a pretty good thing to do as well. Most of those papers have been closed down since, so I do wonder where the sort of the journalists. At the same time, there's more people doing journalism courses, so while there's more people trying to get into it, there's less places to work. So obviously the industry has to sort of diversify how it thinks and create different platforms to go and let people get the experience that they need to become better writers, better journalists, make mistakes and learn from them. So it's changed massively. The internet, I'm trying to remember, I think I joined Twitter in 2009 or 10. It was around the time when Tom Hicks and George Gillette were leading the Liverpool into the abyss, and I remember just loads of people were talking about Twitter saying, it was like a rumour sort of platform at that point. Journalists weren't really quite embracing it as much as they do now. And I went on it and I was like, I was blown away by it. And I remember a colleague of mine said, it's just a load of nonsense, it'll die a death. And I was like, this is going to carry on. I just remember thinking this is going to carry on and shape the industry for the way it is and the way it's going to become. I sort of use social media now as an opportunity to present my work and get more people reading it. Obviously, I work for an organisation that needs sort of an internet presence, so I've got no option to. It's quite challenging at times because obviously. It can take up so much time. The news cycle now is 24/7. In 20, 30 years ago, you'd be working for your pay. Start off at a weekly paper and you'd file, your stories on a Tuesday. It'd go to print on a Thursday, and then you'd sort of start slowly again on the Friday. That was just a weekly paper. On a daily paper, you'd get one back page story a day if you were, say, the Liverpool or the Everton reporter, and that was your job done. Now, if you get one story or one, it's not stories necessarily. It's more quotes based stuff. So the quotes get cut up like some sort of drugs deal and get the spread, so you sort of lose, like, I think you might lose a bit of impact by doing that sometimes. And that's where I suppose the Athletic, we're trying to sort of make the best of the stories that we have rather than the quotes that we have. That's what I like to think anyway. It's not like as much headline led by the quotes. Like, I remember when I first started out at national newspapers, after every match, like the paper that I was at, the question would be, what's the manager said? And like, obviously it'd been a dramatic game. I always felt that was the story, and I felt too much the manager's quotes were dictating what the stories were, when there was actually a bigger, more meaningful story. And I think the managers actually recognise that, so they could create the agenda for themselves. We were allowing them to create the agenda. So, for example, you could say somebody like Jose Mourinho would know that if he said something particularly outrageous after the game, after a bad performance, that would then become the story more than...
We've seen it for years, haven't we? They're deflecting from the team. He's saving his team. He's putting himself out there so that his team doesn't get it. Is that what it comes down to for you? Because I think... Is it made it... And this is not to be disrespectful to the industry, because it's an industry that I love, by the way, journalism. I'm not part of it, but I really respect the people who are in there and who are good writers. But do you think it's made it easier in that you're just taking quotes and you're making a story out of it, rather than having to have that full understanding of what's happened during the game?
Well, I think, obviously, with newspapers, there's only a certain amount of space for the context, I guess, in the way that things are said. And big important people saying dramatic things creates news. Now, don't get me wrong, that there's definitely space for that, but I just feel that what I like about the Athletic is the opportunity to provide the context, the wider context, so it doesn't feel like maybe sometimes things are, some things are being missed or put to the back of priority. It's all there in one place. That's what I think we've got a good opportunity to do. As I said, I think there's absolutely brilliant journalists. Well, there's tons of brilliant journalists. Merseyside stocked with all, with many really, really good journalists and writers. So I'm certainly not like dismissing any of the work that they do. I've always tried to do it a bit differently anyway, because my relationship with the Independents was on a retainer basis. So they wanted me to cover Merseyside and do as much as I could, but they didn't, because the nature of the financial agreement, I guess, without being too crass or detailed about it, meant that they were saying, look, you've got to get your own stuff. You can't, be doing what everybody else is doing, really. So I've always sort of looked at it from a slightly different standpoint anyway, because I never had that full-time job. I always wanted that full-time job, but then the more I sort of did it with the indie, and that allowed me to do book writing and see things, a little bit differently, the more I enjoyed it, really. So I can't complain whatsoever. Obviously, what the Athletic did, they came to me and said, look, we want you to come full-time, but to do more or less the same job, to have more time to do what you're thinking, and time to research, time to think, and just do, try and do a better job than you were doing at the indie. So that for me was like, I was like, I can't really turn that down. I can't turn that down. I'd be absolutely mad. And the nature of the industry is, that with it is unstable. Everywhere is unstable. I don't think anywhere is particularly stable, but I was always a bit concerned that, every season you'd be hoping that you've done a good enough job to get kept on the next season. So, I didn't have that guarantee. Whereas this now, I understand it's a new platform, and people, it's going to be a lot of hard work to make sure that people are in tune with what we're doing and understand what we're trying to do. It's been a really good start. The numbers are good in terms of subscribers and everything else, but that'll have to carry on. We can't just take it easy. And my view was, that this, I think it'll succeed, but if it doesn't, at least it gives me a couple of years at least, I think, to get a new experience, to do something that's really exciting, and to get a bit of extra pay for it. I think in journalism now you've got to sort of maybe think, you can't really think too long term, maybe. Whereas this potentially offered a long term prospect. You never know. You just never know. But I would think with the caliber of the writers that they've got, that they recruited elsewhere, some really good writers, and as well, I must say, like a mix of really experienced reporters, some of the very best in the country, with a lot of young reporters as well, who I think
that says a lot of long-term planning in just that.
Well, it does. The one thing that I'd really stress is that over the last month, it's become really clear to me just how much talent there is out there, but they haven't had the platform to go and showcase the talent. So, there's a bottleneck of talent trying to get through, and they haven't been able to show what they've been able to do. Obviously, there's a lot of young reporters, some lads and some girls who are in sort of the early to mid-20s who've produced some brilliant content, and it just shows you if you've got the other good thing about The Athletic is I think the editorial desk that they've got a really strong one. They take that really seriously. So it's all set up. I just hope that people sort of buy into the idea. I've always felt uncomfortable with the idea that journalism's free. I mean, usually if something's free, it's not very good, and I think that, in the era of sort of clickbait news, I understand why people are fed up with that. I'd like to think that even if they come and have a go with the trial and that's still available, or the offers that they've got, that they'll see the difference, that they'll see we're taking things seriously and we're trying to cover everything as much as we can. I'd like to think that all the big issues, we'll have at least one, big, defining sounds a bit dramatic, but one big, look at what's going on and put pressure on people who are doing things badly. I did a big feature at Bolton. That was one of the first things that I did, which it was some, I remember thinking it was the first bit of proper journalism that I've done, for quite a long time, where I was actually, sort of finding out things that I didn't know, and a lot of other people didn't know. So I think journalism can have a real impact, on the way the world is. I really do, and hopefully some of the stuff that we do, will have that impact.
Cool. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, this is going to be broken into two parts. That's the end of part one, as it were. In part two, we're going to talk about your love of Liverpool and how good you think this Liverpool side is, what it can actually achieve this season. I'm going to ask you the question that I get asked more than any other, and that question, don't answer it now, is can Liverpool win the Football League this season? We're going to talk a little bit about the trademarking issues around the club and in the news and stuff as well. But as I say at the top of the show, go to www.theathletic.co.uk/Redmen TV. You can get 50% off your yearly subscription, just £2.50 a month. No ads, no annoying pop-ups, none of that stuff. It really is the new home of football writing. Simon, thank you very much. We'll see you over on the redmentv.com for part two. Cheers.